Hey Mountaineer fans, welcome back to SVC Sports Weekly with Nosek and Gage. I'm Mike Nosek alongside Dave Gage. And Gage, how are we doing so far this year?
It's good. It's good to be back. I'm real excited to be doing the radio show again with you here and talking about SVC Athletics.
Absolutely. You know, I've had a couple friends and former students, now alumni, texting me and emailing me asking, how's SVC Sports doing? And I think they were really missing the radio program, so we kind of wanted to let all of the sports get back into the full swing of things. And at this point, you know, fourth week of the regular seasons for our fall sports teams, we thought it was appropriate that we get things kicking off ready for our homecoming weekend this week.
Absolutely.
So let's real quickly go over this week's schedule. Not a whole lot going on during the week. Women's soccer visits SUNY Cobleskill on Wednesday for a 4 o'clock match, and women's volleyball is up at Middlebury College for a 7 p.m. match on Thursday evening. That, of course, being a rematch of last year's NCAA regional contest in which Middlebury won 3-1. I think all expectations are that things might go a little differently with them, but we will get to that in a little bit here. A lot on the table we want to discuss, including new coaches, which we will get on to the program as the year progresses. But again, with this being the first show, I think we will put that to the side and just get to the meat and potatoes. So let's go with men's cross country. They had their first 8K race this past weekend up at Saratoga Spa State Park. Last week they ran the Mountaineer Invitational here on campus, which was only a shortened 5K course. First year head coach Kathleen Newton, who has run the course herself, being a former Mountaineer, knew that the 8K was a little tough and that really cuts down on rehab time for the runners. So she condensed it to a 5K. Junior Herson Canta did very well on the men's side, finished second overall with a time of 18:09. And then junior captain Victor Velasquez followed with a 12th place finish, coming in at 19 minutes and 15 seconds. Turn to this past weekend's Saratoga Invitational, again up at Saratoga Springs, hosted by RPI. And again, it went Herson Canta, Victor Velasquez, top two, and then we had Cameron Curtis finished third, shaving 2 minutes off of his best 8K time. And then Corey Barcombe, a freshman running in his first 8K race, finished fourth for the Mountaineers with a time of 32 minutes, 22 seconds. Again, Canta finishing with 28:29.4, good enough for seventh on the SVC all-time top 10 record list for an 8K race. So, a lot of numbers being spit out there, Dave. The men are doing pretty well this year, picking up where they left off last year with a second place NECC finish and rolling already.
Absolutely, that's what I was about to touch on. Is they picked up right where they left off from last year, and Herson has had a really good start. You threw out a couple of his numbers there, and I think as we saw last year, this team continues to improve and will continue to improve throughout each meet throughout this year, and I think you're only going to see these numbers continue to improve. Personal records being broken. Obviously, these are two pretty tough courses. Ours is really tough, but again, it was a 5K. And again, good numbers comparably amongst the teams that were here. They did really well. So I think you're going to see this team be competing at the end of the year for that NECC championship.
Absolutely. And, 7 of the men's participants who ran on Friday afternoon, 6 of them either set personal records or broke their personal records. Again, Herson Canta finishing first. He didn't even race last year for the Mountaineers. Nope. So, taking a year off from cross country and being able to come back and set those kind of times, he's been working hard. He's been training really well. And again, Coach Newton, Coach K as they call her, has really implemented practice and training schedules that allow for them to set these kind of times. And as you mentioned, things are looking good to the point where they could be getting even better and getting higher on those record lists. Canta getting into the top 10 unfortunately pushed Velasquez down to 10th from 9th, even though he broke his personal best time, and he took some seconds off of that. His 29:50 finish on Friday was better than his previous best time, and now all top 10 times for the Mountaineers are under 30 minutes, something that Coach K would like to see. And again, just moving in that positive direction, the team doing well, knowing that they can get better week in and week out, looking forward to that NECC meet in which they could, again, follow the number 2. And I know they have their sights set on Leslie University and bringing the championship home.
Yeah, and I think, you touched on a good point in conversation with you, is you were able to travel with these guys on Friday, and this team loves to have fun. Them and the women's team as well. They're a good group of athletes to have on campus, good group of, respectable student athletes, young men, young women on the women's side. But I think that sort of helps with their training, and that's why they're able to get better, is they all compete with each other as, Coach Newton wants, but at the same time, they get better because of that competition and that friendly competition that they're able to have amongst each other.
Definitely, and chemistry, anybody who watches professional sports right now might be seeing how well the Boston Red Sox are doing. And I know you don't want me bringing that up, but I have to. It's reminiscent of that 2014 where they just get along together, and that helps, as you mentioned, in training, in practices, pushing each other. You go to those races, and the top finishers circle back around to cheer on their teammates. The men are cheering on the women cheering on the men, and just that overall collectiveness and that togetherness that they exemplify during practice and come, meet day really helps, and it is what every coach really wants to see their team doing as a whole. Mentioning the women, let's go over to that side. And freshman Skylar McGuire has finished first for the Mountaineers in both of their opening meets. First, finishing with a 6th place result at the Mountaineer Invitational with a time of 22:56 in her first collegiate 5K race. And then she followed that up Friday with a time of 20 minutes and 37 seconds. So shaving more than 2 minutes off, but of course going from a mountainside course to a fairly flat course up at Saratoga, that's to be expected. That number, or that time rather, 20 minutes 37 seconds, if you're wondering if that's anything special, it certainly is. Second best in school history. I was actually at the finish line, as you mentioned, and I was watching the clock, waiting for her to come around the corner, hoping that she would be there right around the 20-minute mark, because 20 minutes and 7 seconds is the top time for SVC, that being owned, of course, by Coach Kathleen Newton. So ideally, as a coach, she would like to see her time get broken. McGuire was right there. Again, second best time in school history. So she's definitely going to, really help the team come conference meet time. When you also have sophomore captain Haley Omasta, who has finished second on the team in both of those races. They have a couple of freshmen doing very well. And again, you can see that they're moving in the correct direction and getting better week in, week out, working hard, having their sights set on finishing 4th, if not better, come the NECCs.
Yep, and I think, I see it, the same sort of thing, like you said, as these girls are all, pushing each other to get better. Really good group, good core group there. And Skylar's done tremendous things. I know it's just a matter of time here before Kathleen's record is broken. We don't know when it's going to be, but saying that she's a freshman putting up these numbers in her 4-year career, I'm going to say that she's going to come real close, if not break it. So it's going to be fun to look at these times each week and see how close she gets and how much better that she gets throughout the season.
The Mountaineers, both men and women, now set their sights and start training during this week for Saturday's Vermont State Championships. That will be hosted by Castleton State College, up right outside of Rutland, Vermont. Race times: women at 11 a.m., men at 12. And I'm sure, again, we will have some really positive results to talk about next week. Turning over to men's soccer, they are off this week until Saturday's homecoming game when they host Daniel Webster College for a 3:30 start. The men, and this is somewhat reminiscent of our discussions last year at this point in the season. They are 1-7 right now, 0-1 in the conference, so not ideal, but a lot of highlights can be seen from this team. And they did get their first win last week with a 3-2 overtime victory against Bard here at home. And it's those positive. You see this team, and they're working hard. They're not getting down on themselves after these losses, knowing that, hey, look at last year. We had 3 wins and snuck into the playoffs. Just don't get down on yourselves. Don't give up. And we can be back in there. And once you're in the playoffs, anything can happen.
Yeah, you're exactly right there. when you talk to any one of these players the day after a game, they're always discussing, well, I think we're going to turn it around next game. And and that's really tough to do, especially after sort of a down year last year for the program and now sort of a rough start to this season. For them to be going into conference play, yeah, they face Leslie, who is a really good team. They've always been a good team in the NECCs. But to believe in each other is a really good thing, and hopefully they do finally put some of their individual talent together and put it together as a team and find it on the field.
Yeah, you touched on it. They're really working hard and looking ahead, looking for the positives instead of harping on the negatives and looking behind themselves. So, again, 6-0 loss at Leslie on Saturday to open up conference play. They've forgotten about it. They're looking against Daniel Webster this Saturday, saying, hey, let's get back to 1-1 in the conference. Let's start getting that ball rolling, moving in the positive direction. And that's great. That's what you want to see the Mountaineers do. And I think they will be ready for this Daniel Webster game. And with a nice week off where they don't have to get on the road and worry about that stuff, think about another game thrown in there, they can focus on the conference matches, which, for all intents and purposes, are the ones that you really want to get. So if they can come out Saturday, again, get a win, get back to 1-1 in the conference, start to get that momentum rolling for October, they could be a dangerous team. Senior Derek Snow had 2 goals in that win against Bard College, his second and third of the season. So that's great to see the seniors really stepping up. Senior Pierre Massena finished with the overtime winner. Took a nice ball in from the midfield, kind of flicked it over the goalkeeper's head, maneuvered around him, and then had to kind of fend off the Bard defender wall, heading it home for the winner. And that you could just feel the excitement from the team and saying, all right, we got that one, let's keep going.
Absolutely, and I believe they were down 2-1 in that game, so it sort of does talk about, how when they are down 1 within striking distance, they do have some heart and do fight a little bit. So I think this week's a big week, homecoming. It's always a good opportunity for soccer players to play in front of a lot of family and alums. And I know as a former soccer player, I always enjoyed it. Even I know my sophomore year, which seems like 10 years ago now. We played Elms and we were struggling that year, and Elms was a top team in the league, and we actually came away with a victory that year and sort of helped us get into October. So it's one of the things, like you said, homecoming can really be propel into October and help everybody and help the team succeed for a little bit of a playoff run in conference play.
Again, the men's only match this week is Saturday the 28th when they welcome Daniel Webster College for a 3:30 p.m. start up on Everett Field. And looking at the weather in advance, I know it's a few days early and New England can do crazy things.
Yeah.
But it's 73 and sunny, the leaves are starting to change, so it's that perfect soccer weather that you really can come and enjoy a game at. We hope to see you up there. And that will follow the women's game, who also play Daniel Webster College on Saturday. That is a 1 o'clock start. And as mentioned, they also travel to SUNY Cobleskill this Wednesday for a 4 p.m. match. So the women, as it stands right now, 0-5-1 in the season, 0-1 in conference. They also opened up at Leslie back on Saturday. They lost 3-0, and this was after a Tuesday draw here at home against New England College, in which they tied 0-0 after 2 overtimes. So again, nothing too demoralizing. I think the team is staying positive. Moving back to the chemistry, I think the team as a whole gets along very well, and they know that they have to keep each other in a good mindset instead of letting each other get down.
Yeah, I've been able to be around the team a lot this year, and the women's soccer team, that is. And the non-conference schedule was very strong early on. With Juniata, Penn State, Altoona in the Mid-Atlantic region, really tough region. A couple other games that were pretty good. So this week was a start to a positive, I believe. New England College is normally a good team. Game that was tied a year ago, and again tied this week 0-0. And then Leslie's won the regular season, since the conference began, I believe. And that game was 1-0 in the 77th minute. All 3 goals came on set pieces, 2 on corner kicks, 1 on a free kick. So the pace of play, the ladies really played well and kept the game intact. And I think now, same sort of thing, as you get into conference and where they're a little more comparable with their schedule, and hopefully you run a couple wins off and get that confidence once you get the first win.
Let's go back to that set piece thing that you just mentioned real quick. You look back at last year's game in which Leslie won here. I believe the score was 2-1 on SVC's homecoming afternoon. A game in which Southern Vermont was up 1-0. Leslie scored both of their goals in the second half off of corner kicks. You said you've been around the team, you've seen them practicing. Is that something that they've tried to focus on more as a result of letting up those goals on corners, off free kicks, etc.?
Yeah, I know it's something that Michael, Coach Zalzig, has talked with me about a little bit, is how do you make sure that stuff doesn't, come into play? Because if you don't allow a goal in the pace of play, and this game could have been 0-0 maybe, you take those out, you can practice that. So it's something that I think is that he's putting a little more emphasis on to end practices is those set pieces, offensively and defensively. He's done a little more on the offensive side, and I think it's shown, obviously not with goals, but the team has been a little more active with the free kicks. And now this week, especially after the result of the other day, I think he's sort of putting it into more of a defensive mindset as well.
Yeah, I've only been able to really watch 2 of their games, as they've only had 2 home matches thus far this season. And as you mentioned, that when they play, the games in play not really stopped and have those set pieces, the transition, their defense has done very well.
Yep.
Junior Sam Hastings really anchoring that defense with the addition of junior transfer Michelle Flores, and they can really get back and hold that back line and not really let the teams to get in behind them and have those breakaway opportunities or get the 2-on-1s, the 3-on-2s to set up a real good offensive attack.
Yeah, the defensive formation, the 4 defenders have done a really good job, like you said, of good communication in the back and just covering each other when there are. I mean, there's going to be breakdowns. It's soccer. You have to expect that, but they've done a good job with that. And you take away the set pieces, and hopefully you try to get better each day. And I think that's what all of our athletics are doing here, and I think all the coaches are doing a good job with that. And hopefully you see results as this season continues to go.
And I think we would be remiss to not mention what happens when the opponent's offense does break through the line, and now they're taking shots on sophomore keeper Katie Raymond, who I asked her yesterday if she had ever played goalie in high school, and I think her answer was, yeah, a couple minutes here and there. So never played for a full match up until the end of last season, in which Coach Zauzig asked her to take on that role. And then this year, she was asked once again, and she's done tremendously well. This week being named the New England Collegiate Conference Player of the Week, which something you don't really see a goalie garner too often. She had 13 saves in the tie against New England College, and then another 12 against Leslie over the weekend. So very high save percentage. I think only a 1.35 goals against average when you factor in the overtime minutes. And playing very well. I think Player of the Week speaks to that. Something that is really impressive considering the fact that she's never really had much time spent in goal.
Yeah, Katie is a phenomenal defender and someone that possibly could have been in the running for an all-conference defender at the end of the year, maybe if she has a good year. And she's done a good job of stepping into that role, like you said, and put up really good numbers last week. And as she's learning the ins and outs of goalkeeping, I think she's only going to get better.
Exactly. So that's another great positive. And the offense, as we've mentioned on this show over the last year, it comes. Hard work, it's going to be there. You got a lot of young talent, as you mentioned. I think you've mentioned the name Melody Orell, who is a workhorse. And she just puts 150% into every match that she plays, just go all the time. And you can see that development is possible there, and it's going to lead to good things down the road.
Absolutely.
Going over to women's volleyball here to cap things off. The Mountaineers are 3-5 on the season. 2 of those wins coming against Norwich University. They've gone up against a lot of tough competition. Keene State, they were at this past week, losing 3-0 at the Owls' home court. And I was listening to the post-game interview with the Keene University coach on the web broadcast, and he mentioned it. He said it black and white. Let's call a spade a spade. This is not the same Mountaineer team as it was a year ago. And I think anybody can see that. You only have 3 ladies returning from that championship winning team. New coach with Deion Jones. It's a different culture. It's kind of moving into a different era, if you will, of Mountaineer volleyball.
Yeah, they lost a lot last year. I think it's something that we talked about the day their season ended on this show, is how they graduated so many players that had an effect on a season. They do return, like you said, 3 players and that have had an impact. They've been able to compete with Norwich and a couple of the other games that they've been involved in. But this isn't a team that's going to receive regional votes this year. Now, I believe that Coach Deion Jones has a good vision and has a plan to build his program back to where it was, and I believe he wants to do it. I think he knows how to do it. But it's this year. These girls are going to compete in the conference, and some of these regionally ranked opponents are going to be very tough for them.
Yeah, you mentioned conference play. As I said a few minutes ago, that's what it's really all about. That's what determines standings and whether or not you get into the postseason. So 3 and 5, it's not the 7 and 1 in which they started last year, but it doesn't really matter as we move ahead into conference play. The Mountaineers opening up league play with a home match against Regis College this weekend, a team that went to the championship last year, and we knocked them off in that title match. But they're going to come in, and again, it's hard to play that comparison game, who has beat who, and you beat this team by X. But you look across the conference, and Simmons College has knocked off a couple NECC teams. We won that match 3-1 against Simmons.
Absolutely.
So if you're looking purely on that, you say things are even. I don't know if we are heels over head that we were a year ago against these conference teams. So they might have a better chance, but it doesn't mean we're completely out of it.
No, you're right. I'm a scoreboard watcher as a coach. I do it for all the sports across the conference, as I'm sure you do as the SID. And that's something that I've seen and looked at is I don't think that any of our teams here, women's volleyball, men's volleyball, or men's soccer or women's soccer, compare below where the conference is. I think they're all in decent shape, competitive wise to compete. And a lot of these teams have played tough non-conference schedules, which sometimes benefits and sometimes doesn't benefit. But it's something that it could really help going forward here, and I hope it does. I hope it helps.
As I mentioned, a handful of ladies returning from last year's team kind of makes up the roster. It's not a very deep bench for Coach Jones, who came in August, didn't have the chance to recruit over the winter and spring of last year to really build those numbers, but he's doing the best with what he's got, and he's doing very well with that. Seniors, Carrie Baltazar, who returned, has been helping out on the attack end. Last year, she was more of the setter, helping with the assists. That role has been taken on by sophomore Shilani Calliope. You got, Vanessa Ruel is coming in to help out on the defensive end as libero, and junior transfer Jessica Delgado has come in and really helped fill in the void left by Jessica Alvarez and Danielle Heelis, who are really racking up those kills on the offensive end of the net. Delgado leads the conference right now in kills per set with 3.24, the next highest being 2.96. She also leads with points per set, 3.9 compared to 3.4 next down on that list. So they've got the talent there. Unfortunately, if you get into these 5 setters, depth might come back to haunt you, even though the 2 5-setters they've gone to this year, they've come away victorious. So I think as long as they can, knock on wood, stay healthy, and keep things going in that positive direction, come conference play, they should do very well and hopefully find themselves back in the NECC postseason trying to defend that trophy that's sitting in the Mountaineer room.
Absolutely. That trophy looks nice in there, and hopefully it stays there, and hopefully a couple of other sports bring it to our, like you said, our Mountaineer room.
Yeah, as we mentioned, 5 of the 10 SVC sports are in action right now in the fall. But anyone who just walks through the gym or around the campus, could potentially think that all 10 are in season, because you're seeing all these players working out on their own. Softball is in their non-traditional season right now, but aside from that, you see baseball guys in here, tossing, hitting soft toss with each other, or just throwing the ball outside. Men's and women's basketball have been in here every day, if not every other day, playing pickup. So those sports are to come. It'll be before we know it that basketballs are having their Midnight Madness. And we, like I mentioned, we are back in the full swing of things, and win-losses might not be where we want them to be, but they'll come. And it's a really exciting time. As we mentioned, the leaves are starting to change. All the leaf peepers will be back up very shortly, clogging our roads, but that's a conversation for another day. And as we mentioned, homecoming this weekend. It all kicks off at 10 o'clock a.m. Saturday when you guys have your alumni baseball game down on Bill Epstein Field. And then women's soccer hosts Daniel Webster College for a 1 o'clock match. Men's soccer against the Eagles at 3:30. And women's volleyball hosts Regis College for a 7 p.m. match. A lot of Mountaineer action going on Saturday, and I think a lot of students and alumni coming back are really excited for it.
Absolutely. Hopefully everyone comes out and watches the team play.
Yeah, we hope to see you there. And we hope to catch you next week here on SVC Sports Weekly. Don't forget, go Mountaineers!